Hi, I'm Hazel, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Shadow Priest changes that were recently announced to be coming in 8.1. These were unveiled in a blue post yesterday, and they should go up on the 8.1 PTR in the next build. Today, I'm going to be talking through the changes and then giving my thoughts as a medium intensity raiding Shadow Priest. I am definitely not a theory crafter, but I do currently raid as this spec. The post was delightfully formatted with two stated goals at the top, and the first of those being to make Voidform matter more, make staying in Voidform longer matter more, and give the player more agency over extending its duration. So this is great. As a disclaimer, before we get too far into this, I want to get something out of the way. I have stated in the past, and I stand by this, that I enjoy BFA Shadow Priest. It's not my favorite state of Shadow Priest that's ever happened, but I don't think that it's broken, I don't think that it's unfinished, it's just not most people's favorite version of things. The biggest problem with it from my perspective is that they gutted the power out of the area that kind of made sense, which is that long Voidform ramp up, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they kind of moved it into this weird space of burst AoE, but only if you get some build-up time. So it's not like Shadow wasn't good anywhere in BFA, it's just that the situations where it was good don't really make sense with the proposed way that Shadow is supposed to work. So the idea with the first goal is to put that power back a little bit into a long ramped up Voidform. The reasons why they give for why they gutted it in the first place is that they say it was too punishing if you dropped out of Voidform early. The damage penalty for that was too harsh. I do think there needs to be a limit on that damage penalty, but I also think that risk of doing poorly if you mess up and lose your Voidform early is the spice that makes Shadow really fun. If I think back to my very favorite tier of raiding as a Shadow Priest, for me, that was the first tier of Legion. In Emerald Nightmare, when Surrender to Madness was just amazing, and you just had this incredible adrenaline pumping gameplay where if you mess up, you're done, but if you don't mess up, you are a legend. And they've never quite gotten back to that, and I don't know if they need to, but heading back in that direction is definitely something to be excited about. So there are 3 actual changes towards that goal. The first one is Voidform will increase spell damage by 20% up from 10. Secondly, the speed at which your insanity drain accelerates is being reduced by 15%, so you'll be able to stay in Voidform longer. Third, Voidbolt will be generating 25% more insanity, so it's going to be more important than ever to hit every single Voidbolt if you want to get those juicy long Voidforms. So something very important to remember here as we're looking at PTR changes is these are not hotfixes. They're not going to just drop a 10% spell damage increase right into the live game. When you just look through those 3 changes, it's very easy to have an instinctive reaction of, wow, Shadow's going to be really OP now, but they will almost certainly tune Shadow's numbers with those changes in mind so that we're not just doing broken amounts of damage. That's not what anybody's going for here. I wouldn't complain, but that's probably not where we're heading. The second goal stated in the post is to improve Shadow's defensive power and utility. So this was slightly more unexpected for me related to the Voidform one, but it's definitely not unwelcome. In raids, I always felt that my defensives, and by defensives I mean dispersion, I felt that they were usable, but the real pain was during solo leveling or outdoor content that you haven't overgeared yet. If any of you have leveled as Shadow recently, especially from 110 to 120, you know that if you're fighting 2 things, you might be okay. If you're fighting 3, you're in danger, and if you're fighting 4, you may as well just leave and go get a snack. And that situation is one that may or may not be fixed by these changes. That responsibility may lie more on tuning 110 to 120 leveling better, but in any case, let's go through the defensive changes. So first of all, Dispersion's damage reduction is being increased to 75% up from 60 and increases your movement speed by 50%. This is awesome. So I always kind of felt like Dispersion really should reduce more damage. In fact, I had kind of tricked myself into thinking that it did, and then when I couldn't survive something with Dispersion, I was like, well, that's dumb. Because it turns you into a bunch of smoke. You're not even there anymore. Why are you still taking so much damage? I would prefer to see it at like 90, but I can live with 75. It's better than 60. When you factor in the movement speed change, this one may be more impactful in PvP than it's going to be for raiding, but I think altogether this kind of encourages a raider to use Dispersion more as an actual defensive, rather than just an I'm going to pause my Voidform for a few seconds button while I scratch my nose. Secondly, there's going to be a new talent replacing Mania called Intangibility that reduces Dispersion's cooldown by 25% and causes it to heal for half of your health over its duration. I have some mixed feelings about this one. Getting rid of Mania seems like a really easy thing to do because, as they say, it does kind of the same thing as Body and Soul. They're both mobility talents, but Body and Soul is just a better mobility talent, so you're never gonna take Mania. Adding back in a heal to Dispersion in the form of this talent is great because that's probably the biggest thing I miss from my artifact talents. But you're in a situation now where you still have to choose it over Body and Soul if you're going to use it, and we're not a class that has a ton of mobility, or really any mobility outside of Body and Soul. That's it. That's all you got. having to spec out of that to take something else, it almost doesn't matter how good that something else is if the fight requires any movement at all. Now, this does make for a much more interesting decision if there is a fight where you don't have to move, but how many of those are there? Another change that I am scooching up the list because I think it ties into the last one, the PvP talent Hallucinations is becoming a baseline passive. So if you're not familiar, that causes your successful Offensive Dispels, Mass Dispels, Purify Disease, Vampiric Embrace, and Power Word Shield to generate the same insanity per global as Mind Flay. So if you have to stop your Mind Flay to shield to run away, or cast your Embrace, or dispel something, or do an MD, you're not going to be punished in Insanity Gain for stopping to use your utility for a global. So that's the thing that I think is going to make it even harder to get away from Body and Soul, because using Body and Soul is no longer going to penalize you in Insanity Gen. You combine this new baseline with Body and Soul, and that's huge for mobility because you can now stutter step an awful lot faster without losing Insanity by weaving in a Power Word Shield in situations where you would otherwise be using your filler or just spamming Shadow Word Pain. The third change is that there will be no more 10% damage reduction during Shadow Form, but instead, you will get the Focused Will passive all of the time, which causes a melee hit to reduce your damage taken by 15% for 8 seconds. This evens out to be a lot better because it doesn't drop when you enter Voidform like the Shadow Form damage reduction did, and then having that 15% while something's actually hitting you should turn out to be a lot more useful. A couple of other miscellaneous changes here. They are changing Mind Bomb and Psychic Scream to both take longer to break from damage. That seems like a PvP thing. I don't know if that will change my life at all. They're making Void Torrent generate insanity, deal more damage, and will not require Void Form to cast. So I have not touched Void Torrent since I banished my Knife Wife to the dustiest corner of my bank. I'll be waiting to see if the Theory Crafters judge this talent to be worth taking again before I mess with it. Another one, Lingering Insanity, will fade slower, which is nice, especially if we end up doing fewer but longer Void Form cycles. And last, a Surrender to Madness buff, a big one. So the cooldown is reduced by a third, and then the time spent not generating insanity, that penalty at the end, is being cut down to 15 seconds rather than 30. So that's almost to a level where if you time your Surrender to Madness correctly, you can fit it into a window where you wouldn't be doing damage anyways, such as transition phases in fights. You can spend that 15 seconds just furiously healing yourself with Shadow Mend and apologizing to your healers. That might see use, but again, I'm going to wait for smarter people to figure that one out. So those are some Shadow Priest changes coming in 8.1. Keep in mind this is just an announcement of something they're going to put on the PTR, so there may be more, they may change, they may not happen, they're going to do something. The fact that they typed up this pretty and well-formatted blue post about the direction of Shadow Priest changes means that at the very least the direction is probably committed to somewhat, so we can expect good things in 8.1. I am very excited about it. I would love to hear some different perspectives of what you guys think of these changes, so let me know about those down in the comments, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye!